You. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. This is Bill Bullock, and what a treat we have in store for us today. This is our beginning of a new book of Torah, and we'll talk about that in a moment or two. I want to basically say thank you for joining in and letting us talk into your lives, into your houses, into your homes, into your families, into your world. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity each week. Or if it's your first week, welcome and thank you so much. We Here we talk about the Torah. We look at it as a guidebook. The first 5 books of the Bible are the fountainhead of the great river of Revelation. All revelation of the Bible comes from these 5 books, these headwaters that come forth. They get bigger and bigger, and they grow, and they reveal many more things than our first headwaters. But these headwaters are essential to understanding the rest of the revelation, and they color and change, and nothing happens in the revelation stream that is not fed by these headwaters and consistent with these headwaters and their flow, their direction of flow, their pace of flow, their substance of flow. So that is our substance. Welcome. If you're joining us, please leave us a note and let us know you were here. Let us know where you're from, so we can pray for your town, your countryside area, your nation, and your family, if you would. We look forward to hearing your comments, your questions. We'll get to them, and we'll pray for your prayer requests as well if you want to give those. It is, again, it's a beautiful morning in Texarkana, Texas, USA, where I live. We had snow and ice last night. It's melted off. The sun is shining. It is glorious and beautiful. So with that being said, it is my joy to welcome you to one of the most exciting adventures of my life. That's something I used to dread in my studies of the Bible, was to get to the book of Leviticus. Now it is my ultimate delight. It is my favorite book of the Bible. I have so enamored by it. I've had a paradigm shift. I have had a Damascus Road experience, as it were, with regard to the book of Leviticus and who it's about and what it's about and why it is so critically important, what it portends for me, for my family, for my household, for my nation, and for the world, and for the kingdom to come. Parsha number 24 in the Torah. We have 54 parshas altogether. This is number 24. Every week we study a new one. Every week we follow an ancient trail that's been trail of breadcrumbs that has been laid for us since before Yeshua, the Messiah, was born. Since probably back to the Babylonian captivity, the weeks were divided. Weeks of the year were divided into these sections that we could study. And all over the world, every Hebrew person, every person who is awakened to the wisdom and the revelation of these fountainhead books, studies one portion of it, and it's the same portion for every person all over the world. You go and you can talk about this portion because that's what they are reading and studying as well. The portion in particular is Leviticus 1:1 through 5:26. The parsha's name, taken from the first few words of the Hebrew text, is Vayikra. Actually, in this case, the first word of the Hebrew text of the entire book, Vayikra. Now, in English, it's been called Leviticus, and we'll talk more about that. First of all, I want to introduce this book to you as I see it. And I would say, with the imagery that you may have gathered by virtue of watching a few of these broadcasts previously, welcome to the era of Emmanuel. Welcome to the era of God with us, the creator of the universe, dwelling, abiding, shakaning is the Hebrew phrase, but resting in his presence and his permanent dwelling place with his people in the tabernacle, on the earth, bringing heaven to earth, the glory realm, the beauty realm, the majesty of the courts and the chambers and the presence of the Holy One in the heavens, down into earthly time, space, and humanity. What an amazing adventure we are in for. How will we do it? What will be the protocols? This is the era of Emmanuel. What will we do? Well, that's what this third book, it's a how-to manual. how to handle such a thing. So I would say, as the last words we said last week were hazak, hazak v'nit kazek, a Hebrew phrase we say at the end of the reading of each book of Torah, which means basically be strengthened or grow strong. May we all be strengthened. May we all grow strong together. Well, that's where we are. Hazak, hazak to you. Hazak, hazak to your spirit. Shema Israel, awaken in your spirit, because we are going to talk spirit to spirit in these next few weeks. Beginning today, it will be so deep into your spirit, this will awaken your neshama, your nishmat haim, the breath that Adam had breathed into his lungs in Genesis 2:7 by the Holy One himself, the ultimate life force living within you. It will be awakened. Hazak, hazak. Welcome to the ultimate how-to book for lovers of God. The ultimate how-to book for lovers of God. You could put it in modern language or kind of fun, humor of saying this is how to know and walk with God for dummies. But I'm not going to go that route. I don't think you're dummies, and I don't think he considers any of us to be dummies in this regard. But we do need a how-to book, because this is above our pay grade, the normal human, fallen human pay grade, to learn how to be lovers of God, live as lovers of God, walk as lovers of God, and impact the world as lovers of God would do so. So, welcome to the ultimate how-to book for lovers of God. It is a heaven-sent manual of protocols, essential protocols. And these essential protocols are designed for a purpose, to learn how to and to function as we do it, in abiding in intimate communion with, and serving as the diplomatic core of. So the secret protocols are not really secret, they're really revealed for the world to see in the Bible. A heaven-sent manual of essential protocols for abiding in intimate communion with and serving as the diplomatic core of our bridegroom king. Now, I want to point you to a scripture before we go forward into the substance of this portion. And this scripture is kind of to tell you where we're going. I want you to be oriented not just to the past and what we've just come out of as part of the great stories that we're going to read. We're going to talk a little bit about more of our context, orientation phase of where we've come from. But I want to give you a vision of where we're going and why these protocols of Leviticus, Vayikra, are so important. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 4. And I want to begin with chapter 4 verse. This is Moshe at the end of the Torah revelation stream just about. He's beginning this last flow, the last burst of divine energy and wisdom from the Torah. And what is going to happen is he's going to introduce it and tell you what it's all about, what it's for. And here it is. In chapter 4 of Deuteronomy, verse 4, it says, "But you who held fast to the Holy One your God are alive today, every one of you." Held fast to the Holy One your God. That means you were in his presence and you stuck with him. It doesn't just mean you believed in him. "But you who held fast to the Holy One your God are alive today, every one of you." Verse 5. "Surely I," being Moshe, "I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as the Holy One my God commanded me, that you should act according to them in the land which you go to possess. Therefore, be careful to shamar, to treasure, to cherish, and to carefully guard them," to observe them, it says in my English Bible. "For," and listen carefully, this is the reason, this is the essence, "for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this nation, this great nation," he says, "is a wise and understanding people." Oh, but it gets better than that. The second phase of what he says is, "For what nation, great nation is there that has God so near to us, that has God so near to it, as the Holy One our God is to us?" The nearness. Remember, get this nearness picture. For what nation, what great nation is there that has God so near to it, as the Holy One our God is to us? As the Holy One our God is to us, for whatever reason we may call upon it. And what great nation, verse 8, is there that has such statutes and righteous judgments as are in all this Torah, which I set before you this day? So the nearness and the ability to walk in the Torah, these are the essence of where we're going and the way we're going to head there. Now I want to move on. we have had a little bit of context here. We need to discuss a brief area of context. We are engaged in this first 5 books of the Bible, this fountainhead of revelation of all how God-man revelation and relationship is supposed to be designed. I call it the grand adventures of redemption. I sort of package all of the 5 books together. This is the grand adventure of redemption, the plan of God to redeem mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline, and household by household, and individual by individual, and also to restore creation to its original intended state of beauty, fruitfulness, shalom, and harmonious interaction. Now, this is the grand adventure of redemption. And he has different phases and stages he wants to train us. So he's been through 2 stages already. Chapter 1, the book 1 was Genesis. Actually, the Hebrew name is Bereshit, and we talked about that. We won't go into it today. But the name Bereshit or Genesis this is when he gives the explanation of the great ecosystem. He has created. God is an ecosystem creator and manager. If you don't understand that, you won't understand why he lets things happen and why he intervenes when he intervenes. He is the ecosystem manager. He's the super of this entire system of the universe. He is the great ecosystem manager. So he established it. He taught us how he established it, under what methodologies, with what protocols he established the great ecosystem in Genesis 1, or Genesis. And then he began to tell us, the second part of Genesis was to tell us the Abrahamic Covenant cutting protocols. He cut covenant with one man, Abraham, and that is going to change everything. And it colors everything else that you're going to read in the book, the covenant he made with Abraham. And I will talk a little about that hopefully before it's over. That was Chapter 1, episode 1 of the Great Adventures of Redemption. And then we've just completed Chapter 2, the second book of Torah. It's known in English as Exodus. It's a Latin phrase, but the actual Hebrew phrase, the one that was actually given initially, was Shemot, or names. This book that we just completed was the promised great nation building protocols. As he told Abraham in the covenant, when he cut this great covenant with him, it's going to color the rest of mankind's actions on the earth. When he did this, he said, I will make you a great nation. Well, Sefer Shemot, the second book of Torah, is indeed the great nation building chronicles, the details of how he built that great nation out of Abraham's seed. And he not only built it, he just made it maintain itself. And he intends for that to happen, and that's going to be part of book 3. The second thing he did in the book of Exodus was that he defined the mission of the great nation. The great mission is, what is the great mission? To be the Am Segulah, to be the separate, holy, set-apart people of the Holy One in the earth, and to be his Mamlaket Kohanim, which in Hebrew is a Hebrew phrase that means, it's usually translated at least, as kingdom of priests or royal ambassadors, to be his ambassadorial corps of people. And now we're going to get into book 3, the book that I love so much, book of Vayikra. Leviticus is the Latin term that was used by the popes and by the Catholic Church, and that's how most people in the Western world think of it. But Vayikra, we'll talk about what that means in a few moments. But this is going to be the great Abrahamic model nation's training and sustaining protocols. These are going to be the essential ways in which a great nation that was established by the Holy One and redeemed by the Holy One and given and commissioned into a mission by the Holy One will actually be able to train for that mission and sustain the empowerment of that mission and the direction and the focus of that mission. That is what Vayikra is all about. That is what Leviticus is all about. So let's get a brief preview of today's discussion in this forum. We won't have a lot of time. You may want to get a cup of coffee, though, because we'll be here about an hour altogether. So you get yourself relaxed, and if you need to pause this and come back to it later, please do, because we've got a lot to cover, but it really is a brief overview. The first thing we're going to do today is get acclimated to the third book of the Torah, Vayikra. I will tell you, to get you acclimated to it, that this is the heartbeat of the Torah. This is the epicenter, the center of gravity of the revelation stream. That is going to come forth. This is at the essence and the heart. Not only is it centrally located and from the standpoint of the way it is arranged and designed to be presented to us, the middle book, it is also central to all the revelation. It is partial 24 through 33 of the cycle. There's 54 altogether. 24 through 33 is made up of this particular book. It is central to the Revelation stream. You can't avoid it. You shouldn't try to avoid it. We can talk about why you would want to later, but perhaps now we just need to understand it's very important. This is the critical factor, the how-to manual. Second thing we'd like to talk about, getting acclimated to the third book of Torah, is that it assumes the reader is fully engaged in the Bnei Israel Chronicles, the Great Nation Building Chronicles. It's part of and parcel of the Great Nation Building Chronicles. You can't take the book of Leviticus separately, and you can't take it apart, but you also can't take it separately. It is part of the Great Nation Building Chronicles, and it must be understood as that. What has happened in Genesis and what has happened in Exodus must be seen as the precondition of what you're going to see, and is going to make what you see make sense. If you don't understand what's happened in the book of Genesis and Exodus, you will not understand why we're doing what we're doing in the book of Leviticus. The third thing I'd like to talk about as far as getting acclimated to this third book of Torah is that this is the book of Torah that corresponds on the cycle, on the seasons, on the calendar, with certain important seasons of the year. Passover is one of them. For that matter, Purim is one of them. Passover is certainly one of them. Unleavened bread, the season, 7 days of unleavened bread. And the season of counting the Omer, Sefirat HaOmer, the 50 days or 49 days getting ready for Shavuot and Shavuot itself. All these are tied up and connected very intimately with the narrative of the book of Leviticus. Now perhaps you can understand why this is central. If we don't understand the book of Leviticus and how it's connected to the Passover, to the unleavened bread, to the Sefirat HaOmer season, and to Shavuot, then we really will miss a lot of the wisdom of this book. The fourth thing that I'd like to talk about is important. This book, more than any other book of the Torah, there's 5 books altogether, as you know. This book is more than any other, far more than any other. It consists almost exclusively of divine speech. Speech that should be in red in your Bibles because it comes from the Holy One himself. Vayadaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. He spoke. And Moshe is just a scribe writing down exactly what was said. Not Moshe's interpretations, not narratives, not important stories. This is the actual words of the creator of the universe. If you want to read, and the word became flesh, this is the essence of the word that became flesh. Almost exclusively consists of divine speech. I hope that thrills you, excites you. More than any other book of the Torah, there is more divine speech directly from the throne in this book than anywhere else, actually, in the entire Bible. Now, there are only 2 exceptions to the idea that all of the whole book, there are only 2 exceptions, 2 situations in which it is not divine direct speech. And they're strategic. They're placed at strategic points in the narrative, and there actually is narrative at Leviticus 9 through 10. That's the 8th day celebration service, the consecration service of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. And it has narratives of things like the falling of the fire from heaven upon the altar. Then the whole situation with Nadab and Abihu. It gives you important strategic narratives that you need to know to fit into the how to and how not to aspects of interacting and communing and serving the Holy One. Now, the second exception is at the end of the book, near the end of the book. It's called the blasphemer narrative. And this narrative is also a critical strategic point. After you find out all the protocols of how to live, how to behave, how to respond, how to deal with life in the presence of the Holy One, then you have the blasphemer narrative, and you say, "Oh, it is so shocking a narrative." But we understand that will happen in our world too. There will be people who do not follow the protocols and have to bear the consequences and then bear the consequences. The fifth thing that I'd like to talk about is the overall theme. We've got a lot of time to talk about the overall theme of Vayikra. We have all these several weeks that we'll talk about it. But just to tell you up front, it's pretty clearly stated. 4 or 5 times in the book it said, "Be holy." The Holy One speaking, of course, divine speech. And he says, "Be holy." Or "be holy ones" would be it, because it's plural. Be kedoshim. Be holy ones. That seems so simple. It can't be a command because we can't become holy. It is an empowerment. It is a divine, inspiring breath into us that is like light be in the initial creation story. Let there be light, it says in the English. Yehi or, it says in the Hebrew. Be light. Be holy ones. This is the divine empowerment of the Holy One for you. So as we spend these next few weeks in the book of Leviticus, I hope you will feel in your spirit, deep within your neshama, your nishma chaim, the breath of the Holy One that breathes in your eternally in your being. I hope you're hearing you are being empowered to become the holy ones of God. Now, be holy, as he says, because I am holy. That's the second. He always follows that phrase with, because I am holy. Now, if you're with me, you're going to absorb my holiness. I love that. That's the part of the theme. Well, this book is also important because it contains the love chapter of Torah. The love chapter, Leviticus 19. We always hear a lot in the Christian world about Paul's love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. Well, he drew all that off of Leviticus 19. Leviticus 19 is the love chapter of Torah, and it contains the love your neighbor mitzvah, the instructions in that regard, as well as many other aspects of defining love of God, from God, for God, of other people. It is also, interestingly enough, this is the sefer historically in which Hebrew children start their Torah education. Now, they've been listening all the way through their childhood, from some infancy, from the womb, to the discussion of the Torah in their homes. This is part of the Abrahamic Covenant. We would speak of them as we sit in our homes and walk by the way and that kind of thing. But now when they begin the formal education, they begin with this book. Why? Because it's almost exclusively divine speech. Because it is the calling to the Spirit to be holy as I'm holy, because it contains the love chapter and love your neighbor mitzvah and all these other facets. It is the heartbeat of the Torah. Well, beyond that today, beyond getting acclimated to the third book of Torah, we'll spend a few minutes, hopefully, discussing the contents of the opening parsha. Before we get too deep into this process, however, I would like to sing over you the Baruch Hu. This is designed to take you into the spiritual beauty realm of God. This is the language of Hebrew that would be spoken over you. It has English meanings, but I'm not going to discuss those with you. I want to let your spirit listen to these and be awakened to the revelation flow of the Holy One. May it happen, and may it happen now. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamborah. Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Vayet. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher bakar banu mikol hamim V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. Last week, in the great story of the redemption of mankind, the great story that developed into the creation of the great nation, we had an amazing factor. The tabernacle was built, and it began to be assembled, and as it was assembled in its fullness, the Holy One came and filled it. A cloud covered the temple, or the tabernacle, and the glory of the Holy One, the chesed, the weight, the weightiness, the majesty of the Holy One filled. Yes. Move-in day finally arrived for the tent maker's dream. So the eagle has landed, as it were. The eagle has landed, but what do we do now? Now, I want to remind you of this verse from Revelation 21:3. Behold, the tabernacle of God will be with men, and he will be our God, and we will be his people. There is substance to that. There are protocols that go with that, and this is the book of the protocols. The glorious era of Emmanuel, of God with us, dwelling in our midst, communing with us daily, and ruling over us wisely, is now underway. Well, almost. There is one small problem. While the Mishkan is in place and furnished, the tabernacle is in place and furnished and occupied and anointed and ready for business, there's this issue. None of us, not even Moshe, who is our representative, can enter it. It says, and so it was filled with the glory, the kavod, the holiness, the weight, the majesty of the Holy One, such that not even Moshe could enter it. This is a problem. If he's going to dwell among us, but we can't commune with him because Moshe can't enter and we can't enter. What's going to happen? How can we fix this? Is there an app, someone might ask, for it? And if there is an app, and if we can fix this great gulf between man and God, even when he dwells right next to us, then what is it going to cost? And how long is it going to take to fix it? Well, we are going to need to undergo what I have labeled as the ultimate extreme bridal makeover. If you will recall, in the book of Exodus at Sinai, in the revelation of the 10 words, it became clear that we are sort of like a bride candidate to a king. The king desires to have a bride. A bride people, I should say, at least. It's not physically like a marriage, but it is the covenant kind of relationship that is the closest thing on earth we could imagine it to would be a relationship of bride and bridegroom. He wants to have that level of relationship with him. But he's Henry Higgins, and we're the street maiden. We're not ready for that kind of level of intimacy. We're not ready to walk in his circles, to be his ambassadorial corps, to be his maid. We're not even willing to be in his presence. We can't even enter his presence. We need the ultimate extreme bridal makeover. We need some nips and tucks. We need a new wardrobe. We need a new diet. We need everything. We need everything new. We need to be made over. We need an ultimate, extreme bridal makeover. That's the purpose of the book of Leviticus, to give us the protocols for that ultimate, extreme bridal makeover. I compare this to the season we're in, which is the season leading up to Purim. And as you recall, Purim is about the book of Esther and the events of the book of Esther, which took place, in 300-something BC. And if you want to read about it, read Esther 2, 3, and then verses 12 through 15. Chapter 2, verse 3, and then 12 through 15. I'll give you a short-hand version of what happened, how the bride candidates had to be made ready to be with the king, to be in the right place, in the same place as the king. The bride preparations. Well, that is what happened with Hadassah, also known to the Western world as Esther, but that is the same scenario basically we're going to undergo here. So I do need to warn you as we start the book of Leviticus, a major paradigm shift awaits you. I know many people who hate the readings of this book, because it seems so esoteric, it seems so out of touch, it seems so overdone, passed away. Because you see, in the mind, your physical fallen mind, which actually operates on very little capacity of what it was created to can't understand. This goes to spirit. So major paradigm shift ahead. Many of the things that you think you know, because your culture has taught you that, your religion has taught you that, your ethnicity has taught you that. Many of the things you think you know about interacting with the creator of the universe are going to be blown away. You're going to be unleavened of those things, like you were brought out of Egypt from the house of bondage and the mindsets of bondage. There is a whole new opening door. Come up here, he would say, as he says in Revelation 4. Come up here and see what I'm really talking about when I'm talking about relating to the Holy One. The first thing that we need to lay aside is the misleading nomenclature that's been passed down to us by the Roman Catholic Church. And that is calling this book Leviticus, which is sort of a Latin phrase meaning laws of the Levites. That's not what this book is. If you'll find out that is misleading nomenclature designed to take us out of your mind. If you're not going to consider yourself a Levite, you think this book is irrelevant to you. If you consider yourself beyond and more spiritual, more wise, more spiritually in tuned, more saved than the Levites will, you'll just say this book is not for me. But this book is for you, because the real name of the book is Vayikra, and he, being the Holy One, called. This is about the calling of the creator of the universe upon your life. It is not a bunch of laws for Levites. It is about what he calls you. How do you respond? How do you move? And what are the protocols to come into his courts and to live and to abide and to be courtiers there? Misleading nomenclature is step one. Leviticus, please quit calling it that if you, other than just in passing. It is not. That is not the name of this book. This is Vayikra. He is calling you, and he called. Second thing is, I know that there is a whole, everybody has their theology about offerings and sacrifices. Unfortunately, that is the most dangerous thing I know. The things that people think they know, coming out, especially out of reading literature out of the King James era and subsequent eras of the British influence. To think that you know about offerings and sacrifices, because what you think you know about is really about pagan activities, about animal sacrifice by people who are trying to buy God off or trying to earn favor with God through those events, through those activities. And they're indiscriminate. They don't have any, they aren't called for by the one they're trying to please. They are designed by the hearts of men. That is not what we're going to do with offerings and sacrifices. Are you ready to have your entire paradigm of what an offering and sacrifice is blown out of the water and replaced by something deep and spiritual and meaningful? Well, the actual term offering and sacrifice is not found in the Hebrew text, of course. There's no such things as those would be. What you find instead is the word korban, singular, korbanot in plural. If you have more than one, it's korbanot. Korban, what does it mean? We're going to talk about that, but it's definitely not offering and sacrifice. Matter of fact, it doesn't mean that. What a korban means, korbav, it means that of which brings you close, brings you into communion, brings you into fellowship, brings you into unity. That is what a korban and a korbanot, plural, is. You're going to learn that what we think of as a burnt offering is not a burnt offering. It is a korban olah. It is something else. And we'll learn the secrets of the korban olah. That's an essential protocol of learning how to interact with, commune with, serve the Holy One, korban olah. It's not a matter required for some form of forgiveness or salvation or favor with God. It is how you maintain your relationship with the Holy One in your flow of download of kedusha energy. One thing, korban. Second thing you'll learn, you read about is grain or meat offering in the English text. Now we're going to replace that because that's not what it really means in the Hebrew. The Hebrew is trying to talk about a korban mincha. Mincha, and it's an idea of coming close, again, approach, drawing near through a particular methodology that has a particular guide or a particular strategy that's designed to fix a problem that mankind has. And so korban mincha instead of grain or meat offering. Instead of peace or fellowship offering, which you read about in chapter 3 of Leviticus, we're going to realize that Vayikra tells us about a korban shelem, about a drawing up near to the Holy One and catching his goodwill toward men. Catching and absorbing his goodwill toward men and a sense of well-being and a sense of purpose and direction in the world that he has. That's korban shelem, and the protocols are going to be spelled out. Then you're going to see the idea in chapter 4 of Leviticus of sin offering. Oh my goodness, sin offering. And so this is, immediately all your theology of sin comes into play. And all that stuff that the culture and the religions of the world takes you. But the Holy One says, no, come into the Hebrew. Come in with me into the Hebrew, and I'll take you, and I'll show you that there's something else happening here. And in Hebrew, it's called korban chatat. Again, drawing close, getting intimate, coming into unity through seeing that your sin is forgiven, seeing that you have walked away unpunished for what happened, but that there are consequences that flow to the world by virtue of your action. Then the fifth thing is, you'll read in English, is trespass offering. And you're going to find out it's not a trespass offering, it's a korban asham. It's a drawing near with a hall tag, as it were, or a return to work slip, as it were, to come back after something has happened that has kept you away from your duty, your post, your assignment in the kingdom. And then you're going to learn about, in English you read about atonement. We're going to learn about instead what the Hebrew actually really is and what the Holy One's really talking about, which is kafar, a fine form of covering that fills in the cracks, the holes, and makes you whole and well. Well, we'll also learn about things, the difference between holiness and profanity or commonness. And we'll learn what Kedusha means. We've been talking about it for the past few weeks, but we'll learn more about what it means. We'll learn about cleanness, uncleanness. We'll learn about the idea of why there's so much focus upon the tameh, the unclean, and what tuma, or the uncleanness. What is the corruption that we are trying to avoid? That if we're going to be intimate with, and we're going to be in constant communion with the Holy One, if we're going to serve in His courts and His chambers, then what is it we need to make sure we are not polluted by, corrupted by, in order to make sure that our service is not colored, tainted in any way, and does not send the wrong message to the world? Boy, this, in the whole book of the Vayikra, this is going to be a very important theme, and it is not something that is going to ever go away. Now, the closer we are to the Holy One, the more important these things become. I'm not talking about whether you're going to go to heaven when you die. I'm not talking about whether you're going to be able to be a member of some institution on the earth, religious institution on the earth. I'm talking about whether or not you're actually going to designed to have on this earth in this life. So those things will make up our great paradigm shift. This book is indeed the how-to manual for lovers of God. And the makeover process, the ultimate extreme bridal makeover process, actually begins at the brazen altar. I call it our beauty for ashes protocols. How we give our ashes, surrender our ashes at this altar, and receive an infusion of beauty and wholeness through the protocols. God has a how-to manual in this protocol. All these things we'll talk about. The Korban Olah, the Korban Mincha, the Korban Shelem, the Korban Hatat, and the Korban Asham, and Kippur, all will take place at the brazen altar, the copper altar. Well, in Sefer Shemot, as far as context goes, we learned that we are not only redeemed from bondage, which most people will stop right there. I'm redeemed. We're not just redeemed from bondage to the slave chambers of the world. We are forgiven and cleansed of sin, but we're not just even forgiven and cleansed of sin. There's something beyond forgiveness and sin cleansing, and that is that we have been called to service. As the covenant was with Abraham, Abraham was not just going to believe stuff and be credited to righteousness. He was called to do righteousness and justice. We'll go from chapter 15 to chapter 18 of Genesis. I won't take the time to unpack it for you, but he was called to more than just being accredited, being imputed righteousness. He was called to do righteousness and teach his children and his household following to do righteousness and justice as well. Well, we're going to that. This is about we are called to service. What does it mean to be called to this service? Well, it means that He is our God, and we are His people, and we are this great nation that He promised, or we're supposed to be this great nation that He promised Abraham He would bring forth, that all the families of the earth would be blessed, and that a world-changing mission of the Mamlekat Kohanim, the kingdom of priests, the Goy Kadosh, the holy nation, would come forth from us. We are that because we are His people, and that must have actual impact upon the world. It has to happen in real time, not just in belief system and someday when we go to heaven. And we learned in Sefer Shemot, in the book of Exodus, that as we Shema, as we tune our souls into, as we become into tune, in resonance with His voice, and as we step into the ruts of His covenant, and walk in those ruts, in those pre-established pathways, we become His Am Segula. That's how we do it. We become His Mamleket Kohanim, as His kingdom of priests. That's how we do it. We become His Goy Kadosh. That's how it takes place. Shemot ended. Exodus ended. We basically had the tabernacle set up. The Holy One filled it, but Moshe was not able to enter. So it's time to radically rethink what happens next. Now that we have that context, this is about us getting and staying close to the Holy One. Radically rethink the book that the religious world now calls Leviticus. It is not an outdated and irrelevant book of laws for Levites. It was not written by Moshe. This is written by the divine choreographer, the greatest of all creative writers. Now I want to talk just for a second about that. He is a creative writer. That does not mean what you may think it means. We think of creative writing in the world as we have a creative thought and we write it down on paper. That's not what the Holy One is. He is a creative writer in the sense that what he writes, he creates. He makes it happen. He makes whatever he puts on the scroll, he makes it come to life in earth in real time. That is his way of creating, creative writing. So we're going to realize that Leviticus is part of his creative writing project. He wants to create everything he is speaking here, not order you to do it. He wants to give you the power and empower you and inspire you to do what he says. Make it happen in real time. So, this book is an inspiring and empowering marriage manual. A manual for lovers of God. It is written by the Holy One for all who love him, who are called according to his purpose. And if you don't love this book, if you don't enjoy and delve into this book and not get caught up in the romance of this book, then perhaps you've lost sight of his love for you, or your love for him, or the fact that you are called according to his purpose. And it is applicable. This book and its principles, its protocols are applicable in all places, in all generations, and all times. And Mashiach did nothing to change that. Instead, he came to reinforce it. Vayikra. Following all the instructions, we built the tabernacle, but how in this world can a bunch of former slaves of Egypt honor, commune with, and take on the majesty of, and even serve the agenda of the glorious one who sits enthroned at the center of the tabernacle? There's our challenge. So welcome to the King's Court Chamber and Presence Protocol Boot Camp. King's Court Chamber and Presence Protocol Boot Camp. It's not about adopting a form of religion or some ideas of legalism. Lovers don't get legalistic. It is about getting grounded in covenant communion. It is about pressing ever deeper into relationship, into interaction, into the heart of our King, and drawing from him every ounce of Kedusha energy and every empowerment and inspiration he has to give. And that's a lot. If we're going to become regulars, courtiers in the courts of our King, functional courtiers that actually do his will, then we have to start at the entrance to the tent of meeting, at the stage for the great passion play that the world knows as the Mishkan, as the brazen altar of the Mishkan. Welcome to the Parsha of the ultimate RSVP invitation. You've received invitations, I'm sure, in the world that have an RSVP attached to them. Respondez s'il vous plaît. Advise if you're coming or if you're not coming. Welcome to the Parsha of the ultimate RSVP invitation. The Holy One wants to know, are you willing to come? Do you want to actually enter into this glory realm, beauty realm, into the service of the King in his courts and chambers according to his ways that will bring forth his purposes? Or are you content for him to be having his event without you? Hoping that one day you'll go to heaven, hoping that you'll get blessed while you're here on earth. Are you ready to respond to the ultimate RSVP invitation? That's what the book of Leviticus is about, and particularly the Parsha called Vayikra is about. Our King, the bridegroom, is summoning us. He's calling upon us to report to and commune with and serve him in his chambers. There are three dominant Hebrew verbs that will help us to reorient ourselves as we get ready to go into this book of Leviticus. The first one is kara. Vayikra, you hear that as the last part of the word Vayikra. And he, and then we have the kara. And he did what? What is kara mean? And he did what? He called. It's a call out, especially to call out a greeting or an invitation. It is to call for someone to make a transition to come into your presence. It's a welcome. It's like if you're extending a scepter, as it were. in King Ahasuerus's courtyard. He extended his scepter to Esther, or Hadassah, saying, "You're welcome to come into my presence, and please come." Now you must respond to this extended scepter. Well, that's what Kara is, Vayikra. So understand that you are being called. His scepter is being extended to you, but you have certain protocols you need to follow as you step into his presence. The first usage is found in Genesis 1:5. Elohim karad the light. He called it day. He offered it a realm of operation, the realm of day. Well, the second word is very similar. Kara is kuf resh aleph, and the second verb that we're going to use, the dominant Hebrew verb, is karav, which means that we've got the same first two letters, kuf and resh, but the third letter is not the aleph. Now it's the next letter in the Hebrew alphabet, the bet. So it's not kara, it's karav. Now, that means, karav means to, in response to this call, this extended scepter, to approach. I hope your mind is being blown right now. When this is the word that's going to be translated as offering. Make an offering in your English Bibles. Make a sacrifice in your English Bibles. I hope your mind is being blown and your paradigms are being exploded. This is a call to respond to the extended scepter. To respond to the scepter of an invitation, the RSVP, and to draw near with humility and with intentionality according to the invitation that has been extended to you. First usage, Genesis 12:11, when it came to pass when Avram was karaving, when he was drawing near to, when he was responding to the invitation of Egypt, he said to Sarah certain things, and we know what that was. But this issue of when you draw near with a protocol, with an intentionality, with a purpose, this is a response to this kara call. Kara and kara. The third verb, I could list a number, but I'm going to stop with kara, with the next one, which is tamam. Tamam. It's tav, mim, sofi. Tamam. It means to make whole. Do you understand now the idea of the extended scepter? And the response to the extended scepter is to make whole. First of all, it's to unify the one who did the inviting with the one who gets the invitation. So it's to unify us with our Creator, the one who wants us to be shekani with Him, dwelling with Him, abiding in Him, and wants us to therefore be absorbing all of His holiness, His energy, and His goodness, and His goodwill toward men. So it's tamam, to make whole, to complete, to nurture to full-grown and functional status. Hallelujah. This was first used, this verb is first used to describe Noah. It's actually used in an adjective form. It says, Hava tamim vedoratam. He was, in English we read, perfect or whole, complete in all his generations. He was caught up in this wholeness of being healed by the Holy One's presence after he's come in according to his response. Those three verbs. There are 5 dominant nouns in the Hebrew of this parsha. Nouns that will change your whole focus of everything about the, quote, offerings or the sacrificial system that the Holy One actually instituted. The men didn't institute that system. Moshe didn't institute that system. This was the Holy One designed it to teach us how to interact with Him. And the first noun that we'll see is olah. It's ayin lamed hey, for those of you who are trying to write down in Hebrew. Aleph lamed hey. It's from a noun which means to ascend, to be lifted up to God. It means that there is a great gulf between us and the Holy One. He is higher than we are in spiritual elevation, and we must actually be lifted up. And we must, in order to make a transition, we must not come empty-handed. We must go up to Him in some way. That's the olah. It's not burnt offering. It's not making something burnt so that He likes the smell of it, although that does happen in the process. What is really happening is we have to find a way to lift ourselves out of the mundane, the profane, the common, the corrupt part of the world and ascend spiritually into the beauty realm, the majesty realm of God. Olah, that is, take burnt offering off out of your vocabulary and throw that away. Olah, we are making olah. Second one is mincha. This is what's usually translated as grain offering or meat offering, I think, in the King James Version, because they use meat a different way than we do today. Mincha. And this is mim nun chet hey. It's from the verb nacha, which means to have a portion, an apportionment. Think daily bread. Think about how you relate to the material aspects of the world and what you really need. If you trust the Holy One, daily bread's good enough for you. If you don't, then you want to accumulate all that you can and then lock it up. What they call put it in a can and sit on it, on the can. Get all you can and put it in a can and sit on the can. Now, the first usage is early in this Bible. First usage of mincha is early in the Bible. It's Genesis chapter 4. Both Cain and Hevel presented something to the Holy One. And in Hebrew, both of them are called minchot, or the mincha. This was an apportionment that they set aside. Now, the idea is that we understand we have a portion, and we understand he has a portion. We're in this together. This is a unified front, and we give him his portion. He gives us our portion. It's mincha. Third thing is shalom, the noun shalom. It's from the Hebrew verb shalom. We know it. We recognize the term shalom, the greeting shalom, the sense of wellness, wholeness, peace, soundness. So shalom is the declaration, an absorption, and a realization, and a absorbing of the shalom of the Holy One, the peace, the shalom of the courts of the King. We need this desperately if we're going to live upon the earth. It means that we absorb the goodwill of God toward men, toward circumstances, toward places, toward the physical things of materiality. We understand he's an ecosystem manager and not a judge. He is here to make the system work better, not to just start willy-nilly choosing what we take out and what we don't take out because it doesn't please us. Shalom is goodwill toward men. Hatat, the fourth thing, usually it's translated as sin offering. What a change. Hatat, het, tet, aleph, tav. Hatat is to stray from or to return to an assigned trajectory or assigned mission. In other words, you step out of your mission, you take a detour, or you come back from the detour. There's a process of being away from the course that you're supposed to be on, the track that you're supposed to be on. Part of it's going out, part of it's coming back, but what you're having is you're outside the assigned trajectory. And learning how to readjust, learning how to make in-flight corrections, learning how to get back on course after you've been off course. It's not just a sin offering to appease God. This is an idea of what we need to do, the protocols we need to follow to get back on the right track. Hata'at. And it's interesting, it comes from Genesis 4:7, the first usage. God's talking to Cain after he's gotten angry with his brother. Before he kills him, he comes to Cain. And he says, if you do tov, if you do that which is bringing forth good in the earth, will you not be approved, accepted? But if you make lo tov, if you don't make tov, if you don't make the things that are good for the world, if you're not helpful with my ecosystem, then here he says next thing, your chatat lies at the door. Most people say, sin lies at your door, it's crouching, trying to get you. No, this is not sin, it's chata'at. What lies at his door? The protocol for coming back. The protocol for being restored. This is what we need to understand about Hata'at and these protocols and these strategies of how God interacts with us and wants us to learn how to live in his presence and live out of his presence. We have a pathway back, and we need to take that pathway, and we need to follow that pathway till we get back on the track. And the fifth Hebrew noun that dominates this is Asham. It's found in chapter 5 of Leviticus or Vayikra. It's Aleph, Shin, Mem, Sofit. And it's what I call a return to duty post after you've been absent protocol. There's sort of like a recognition that you're back. Recognition on your part that you're back to work, back to the task assigned, back to the purpose for which you were created, and also recognition by the Holy One, by the one who is directing the mission, who is taking care of the ecosystem and responsible for that you are indeed back. Your letters of passage, as it were. So are you ready? Are you ready to face the challenges of the next level of God-man relationship? Are you ready to explore the wonders of going deeper and deeper and deeper in communion and fellowship with and service of our King? The secret to success in this venture is the lessons, the protocols of Vayikra, what he is calling. Vayikra el Moshe vayadber Adonai el Moed lemor, and the Holy One spoke to Moshe, and he called to Moshe and spoke to him from within the tent of meeting. What will he say? What will you hear? How will you respond to what these messages are? Will you take on the protocols? Will you see them as a pathway of prayer? As a matter of fact, if you want to understand how this all works, just consider the way Yeshua of Nazareth taught his disciples to pray. He says, pray after this manner. And of course, you know I'm not going to repeat the prayer. But understand this, that each of the actual petitions of that prayer correspond to the 5 things in the first 5 books of Leviticus. One by one, he goes through the list. The first starts with, may your kingdom come and your will be done on earth as is in heaven. That is the Korban Olam protocol. May there be a mixture of heaven and earth, a blending of heaven and earth, through the surrender of our will to your will. And may your will be done, not our will. That is the Korban Olam protocol. And so it is perpetuated by Yeshua in this process. Same thing with regard to the second thing. The second thing is, and give us this day our daily bread. I've already mentioned daily bread, mincha. This is the second. This is chapter 2 of Leviticus. This protocol for learning what is our portion. What do we really need? What do we need if we're going to trust in him? And why would we not be so obsessed with our material goods? Mincha. This is the second thing of the prayer. The third aspect of the prayer, it's actually kind of reversed, because in the prayer he says, forgive us our sins. That's going to be chata'at, but as we forgive those who trespass against us, which is what we're talking about with regard to Shalom. The Korban Shalom, the third process, is as we forgive those who trespass against us. Why would we forgive those who trespass against us? Because we understand God has goodwill toward men. God desires to bring about a great healing and a great restoration, not a great judgment. He's not going to be rejoicing over a judgment. He's going to be rejoicing over a restoration and a healing. And when we realize that, it's like, how can we be offended? How can we be angry? No, that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to celebrate that fact that God has goodwill toward men. Korban Shalom. The next thing is, forgive us our sins. Forgive us our sins. This is Salah. This is the idea of Korban Hatat. There is a pathway to come back to his actual assignments, missions. We put aside the things that we picked up, the dirt that we picked up along the way. And then finally he says, let us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil, from Ra, from that which is destructive to the earth, calamitous in our lives. Lead us not into that temptation, into that direction. And that is what the Korban Hashem is. Get us back on the path that leads to life, health, and peace. Give us our hall pass to come back and acknowledge that we're back and that you're here waiting to lead us in the next step. Well, we are being called. Hear the call, O Holy, O Spirit, O beautiful one, be a people of God, spiritual people. Hear the call of the Holy One. Come out. Come out of your ethnic and your personal and your cultural and your religious mediocrities. Come out of your self-will. Come out of your sense of entitlement or your sense of victimization. Come out of your house of bondage. Come into the king's courts. Come into the king's chambers. Come into the king's presence. Come into the king's council, and you will go far. It's time to leave you. Shabbat Shalom. See you next week.